Hello, peeps. This is the Hillbilly Halfwit here again, and we've got some good news this time for the farming side of things. So after 3 months of putting all these protest videos up, it seems like we've got the Welsh Government to back down. So they've decided to put the scheme on hold for 12 months. I totally accept this election year and they'll probably go back on their word, but at least it's one more year where I don't have to be forced into some scheme I don't want to be in, personally. So please, if you would like to comment, rate and subscribe and share this stuff out there, because this channel, I know people don't like to say this, I am sure we've been doing some good. I'm absolutely sure the stuff we've been putting out on here has been putting things and sharing things that we wouldn't have been censored. And as I've been going around certain areas, I'm hearing my own facts being quoted, so it's a good thing. So let's carry on. Let's have a look. Now, of course, I think this will be because of the election year, and they probably will go back on it if you know about what Welsh Senedd is like, but at least it's added another year to the fight. So here we go. This is going to be quite a bit of a reading out of what is actually happening. So, live. Wales puts controversial farm subsidy plans on hold for a year. Thank God. Because I'd have had been forced into another scheme next year. I still think it's until after the election is done and they're going to do what the hell they like after. So I wouldn't trust them with a barge pole. Welsh people were also very angry about the impact of TB on farms and food prices and wanted the Welsh Government to know about it. The Welsh Government has announced a major backdown in its plans to change the way farmers are subsidised. Thousands of farmers and agricultural staff have protested against the proposed sustainable farming scheme, which the Welsh Government was due to start introducing next year. During January, farmers held the Go Slow protests around Wales and the following month. So that's when I started doing these protest videos. And I hope that we have done something to help all this, showing all this corruption in the Senedd, which is nothing compared. The amount they spend on agriculture is only 320 million throughout everything, when they got a £4.8 billion climate budget wasting. Today, the new Welsh Farming Minister, Hugh Davis, has announced a year-long delay to the rollout of the scheme. The transition period for the Sustainable Farming Scheme was due to be introduced from January 2025, but will now be in 2026. He's also said that instead of introducing 17 compulsory universal actions, which all farms would have to meet to be paid through the scheme, there will be an optional and collaborative actions looked at. Well, I will give somebody a chance. I will give the guy Hugh Davis a chance, because this will make a big difference to me next year. As you know, I don't make a lot of money. I make under 10,000 before I start paying any bills or my council tax. So another year stretching this out will really help me get my head around it all. So the Sustainable Farming Scheme will replace previous funding schemes delivered as part of the EU and will see farmers paid if they meet certain requirements. 17 so-called universal actions, including at least 10% of each farm to be managed as habitat and at least 10% of land to have trees planted on it. More than 12,000 people replied to an online consultation about the scheme, one of the highest figures for any Welsh Government policy consultation. Farmers argued that a blanket policy did not take into account specifics about individual farms, and that for some it was impossible to meet the requirements. They said they did not oppose taking measures to help climate and nature targets, but they had to be right. That's fair enough. Mr. Davis said this morning the rollout will be delayed at an event at a farm in Bridgend. He said, "We have always said the scheme would not be introduced until it's ready, and I stand by that. Today I am announcing that we will look to have a SFS preparatory phase in activity in 2025, with the proposed SFS transition period starting from 2026. Mr. Davis said the new timeframe will allow important conversations and discussions about and he has set up a ministerial roundtable for that to happen. I intend to work at pace to identify areas of agreement and place the emphasis on matters where more work is required, he said. That group will, he said, find an appropriate payment methodology and will consider the updated economic assessment based on the revised scheme. A data exercise including feedback from farmers will be carried out to provide an accurate picture of the habitat and tree coverage across all farms. Together we can create a future where our farmers produce the very best of Welsh food to the highest standards while safeguarding our precious environment. He said, we are listening and will continue to listen. We must continue to work in partnership to finalise a scheme that works long term, he said during an event at a farm in Bridgend. Well, I am a fairish person and I am prepared to give this guy a chance. Like I said about the leader as well, only there's been some dodgy dealings with the leader, as we know. If this guy is true to what he will stick by what he's saying here, that sounds like it's something that we can deal with. But as I've told you before, I'm not in this scheme. I'm in the smallest possible scheme you can be in. And what was going to happen next year, I was going to be forced either to go in this scheme that I didn't want to go in, or have nothing whatsoever. So have no income. It's so for me it was not very good, to be quite honest with you. So at least that's another year I can think about what on earth we're going to do. So there's a small contingent of protesters in Cardiff city centre holding their no farmers, no food banners and cheering each beep. And well, I don't think these protests in Cardiff are doing anything, to be honest. The protests in little towns everywhere were really annoying the government because they couldn't control it. In Cardiff, they can control it all by having the police around and the media to stop it all. But when these little protests were just turning up in Newtown and Shrewsbury and all places like that, the media could not control it all and the public were on our side. So, but I'm still a bit wary of this because I think they're only doing this because of the election year. And once they get voted back in, they'll probably push this through again. So when it comes to voting day, I'm still going to vote somewhere else. Statement demonstrates a willingness to listen. Farmers Union of Wales President Ian Rickman say they are pleased to see the Cabinet Secretary willing to work in partnership with the farming industry. He said, since the last consultation, we have consistently called the Welsh Government to extend the BPS at current levels for next year, given the amount of change required in regards to the sustainable farming scheme within the proposed time frame. This announcement on maintaining the BPS alongside SFS permanently phased next year is a major step in the right direction and provide both stability for farming businesses and a solid foundation for meaningful discussions. The development of the SFS represents the most significant change in agricultural policy in Wales for decades. It is therefore reassuring that the Cabinet Secretary maintains that scheme will not be introduced until it's ready. It is essential that we avoid any gaps in support during the transition from BPS to SFS, which underpins the economic sustainability of farming businesses. The continuation of such support is therefore welcomed while we work to design a scheme that delivers for farming businesses, our rural communities and the environment. While we welcome the statement today, which demonstrates a willingness to listen, to work with the industry and support rural Wales, we'll wait to hear from the finer details through the Cabinet Secretary's oral statement on plenary this afternoon. There's been a real frustration within the industry over recent months, and of the finer details will be crucial as its work progresses over the coming months. Now, I got to be honest, I think the NFU were very slow with all this. They eventually come to the table, but they were only forced to after the farmers started protesting on their own. This would have been let through otherwise. There's some people at the top have done pretty good, to be fair, but the whole thing was left until too late. They'd let this thing carry on and where they should have nipped it in the bud. Personally, what I think should happen is they should keep the BPS scheme for people like myself who just want to do the minimum. And because I keep my farm for wildlife, really, don't I? You've seen it. You've seen my farm. It's full of wildlife. Now, I don't want to go into these schemes where I don't want to be to the point where you're having people marching about my farm that I own, telling me what to do. That's the part I don't like about this SFS. I'm not in that scheme, like I said. The scheme I have at the moment is barely, I don't get a lot off them, but I don't have to have them messing me about. And somebody on the dole will get more money than I get. It's that sort of thing. Now, I think there should be a cut-off of subsidies at a certain level. I don't know, maybe at 200,000 or whatever these big farms are getting, or 100,000 or whatever it is. It should be a cut-off, and they shouldn't be paying out any more above, because it's encouraging huge farms. Like a farm that's getting 200,000 or 300,000 can just buy another farm just like that in 1 year. Where somebody like myself who wanted to have a few extra acres, it's impossible. Because if people don't know, when you go to the bank, if you haven't got an income of over 50,000, they won't give you a lower interest rate. That's how it all works. So it encourages people to get in who've got money to borrow, but the people who haven't got any to start with can't afford it. So that's the problem I had when I was in the last 20 years, really. So it is essential that we avoid any gaps in support during the transition from BPS to the SFS, which underpins the economic that's sustainability. I hate that word. That's all civil service speak, isn't it? Of farming businesses. The continuation of such support is therefore welcome while we work to design a scheme that delivers for farming businesses, our rural communities and the environment. While we welcome the statements today, as I do myself, but I'm still a bit worried because it's election year, which demonstrates a willingness to listen, to work with industry and support rural Wales. We'll wait to hear the finer details through the Cabinet Secretary's oral statement this afternoon. I think I read that before, didn't I? Did I read that? Yeah, the Conservatives reply now. Conservatives have given their reaction to the announcement. James Evans, MS, Shadow Rural Affairs Minister, said, I welcome the initial statement from the Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs this morning on the Sustainable Farming Scheme. It's encouraging that he has listened to the concerns I have raised with him on the future farming support in Wales. It's a positive step to see the Minister has listened to the industry, the unions and all those thousands of people who responded to the consultation by delaying the important implementation of the SFS and committing to rolling forward BPS until 2025. If they would just roll that on continuous, so a farm of a certain size like mine, small family farms, could just carry on having the BPS, it'd be a brilliant job. Because I don't want to go in these bigger schemes. I just would like to have a little bit of income so I can carry on producing food and not bothering anybody, really. You know what I mean? My job is to feed the nation. That's what my job is now. That's what I enjoy being a farmer, but you've got to be able to feed myself, haven't I? I've got to be able to pay my own electricity bill, and I've got to pay my own poll tax. So I wish they would carry on the BPS or allow certain farms of a certain size to carry on the BPS personally. The farmers I speak to have major concerns about tree planting, common land, tenant farmers, and we need to have more detail from the Cabinet Secretary over amendments he's going to make to the scheme and make sure we have something that works for our farmers and not against them and safeguards the future of the industry. Yeah, that's a very good statement, to be fair. That's what it's all about. No farmers, no food, no future. Now, if you're the public listening to this, I'm sure you see lots of farms. There are farms making a lot of money. I don't deny that. But there's also 50% of the farm in Wales, family farms now, earning less than 30,000. So that's for a whole family. And out of that, they've got to pay for everything. The tractors, everything. So when you start getting into paying for diesel and tractors, and you start paying for fertilizer, and you start paying for everything else, you have nothing left when you're a smallholder. Bigger farms also obviously have a bigger problem. You know, it's multiplied, isn't it? But they are in more schemes and getting more money with this SFS scheme. So it needs to be designed to help them as well. Obviously, you've got to make some money. If you're putting all your things on the line, you should be able to make a little bit of profit, shouldn't you? That's nothing wrong with that, is there? So this is a good thing for today. I'm very pleased with this. And I'm sorry it's been a long video, but it's nice to get it all out, what they've said about this. Now, this is the NFU Cymru President Aled Jones has welcomed today's announcements. We are very, very much share your thoughts of the Cabinet Secretary that this scheme must not be introduced until it's ready. Neither farming families nor government can afford to have a scheme that fails to deliver on our vision for food, nature, climate and communities. This is a scheme that will underpin food production, our farmed environment, our communities, our rural businesses who are dependent on a thriving farming sector, our language and our culture for generations to come. I welcome the commitment from the Cabinet Secretary to take the time to listen to those impacted by the proposals and work in partnership on the future development of the scheme. With the opportunity the Cabinet Secretary has provided through this announcement today, there is a responsibility for all of us, government, stakeholders and farmers, to ensure that the SFS works for Wales. Earlier this year, NFU Cymru spoke with over 5,000 farmers at roadshows and other events, the length and breadth of Wales. It was a sobering and sometimes harrowing experience seeing firsthand the levels of concern and worry amongst farming families at some of the proposals within the consultation. We must use the time we have to redouble our efforts to get the scheme right for all farm types, sectors and regions of Wales, for tenants and for common land. A sufficiently long and well-managed transition, coupled with detailed economic analysis prior to the scheme being finalised, is needed to ensure that the scheme delivers for farmers, the supply chain and for rural communities and businesses who rely on farming families for their vitality and prosperity. There is a need to consider the practicality, suitability and burden associated with the universal actions and scheme requirements that have been proposed by our Welsh Government. In its response to the consultation, NFU Cymru has suggested alternative ways in which we believe the outcomes that Welsh Government wishes to achieve through 17 universal actions and 2 scheme requirements can be achieved. We certainly believe there's an opportunity to rationalise both the number of actions and the requirements within these actions, whilst delivering a scheme that supports the ambitions as a nation in relation to food, climate, nature and communities. Sorry this is long, but it should end now in a minute. For the farmers that are watching this, you need to know all this really. This is the end now really. What is a sustainable farming scheme? The proposed SFS would pay farmers for actions resulting in environmental, animal welfare and social outcomes over and above minimal legal requirements. Farmers will be required to carry out a suite of universal actions for which they would receive a universal baseline payment. Non-compulsory, optional and collaborative actions would be available for additional payments. At least 10% of each farm manages habitat and at least 10% under tree cover as woodland or individual trees. The SFS is currently due to be introduced in January 2025. Entry to the scheme is voluntary and farmers must have sole control of a land to receive payment. National Farmers Union Cymru representative Abby Reader, she does a good job to be fair to her. This is a really good news. The NFU Cymru has got a seat at the table. She told members in a video message there will also be an evidence panel set up to look at other options over trees for carbon sequestration, which is obviously very welcome to us. What is particularly welcome is that they are a part of a suite of requests that we put into Welsh Government at the end of February. It's really good to see these come into play. Now, I'm not going to read this because these lot have really annoyed me. My dad voted for Plaid Cymru all his life. I haven't. But Dad voted for Plaid Cymru all his life until he was 86, I think it was. And he would be turning in their grave at the way Plaid Cymru has been working with Labour over the last decade to bring in this scheme to try and destroy small farming. They're basically arsehole creeping now to try and get their votes back. Now, it'll work probably. There's been a couple of MPs who've been supporting farming, but there's been a huge majority in the party that have been all behind this attack on farming and still are. So I would say to people, do not vote for this party. And the only way we can get this Senedd to be under the cosh a bit is to remove a few of the MPs. Now, at the moment, Plaid and Labour have got control of it because they've got more MPs. And I think it's one more than anybody else, so they can get anything through. So if we can just move a handful of MPs off Labour and Plaid, maybe 5, that would mean they wouldn't have total control over everything. So even if the Plaid and Labour came together as a power sharing agreement again next year, for instance, they wouldn't have enough votes between the both of them to overturn everything. That's what needs to happen. You need to vote this lot, Plaid and Labour, and the Greens as well. You need to move your vote somewhere else to get them to have less MPs, because this lot have been disgusting how they've acted. They've later on in the party, when these protests started happening, they're pretending to be all in on it, but they ain't. So sorry this video has been a bit long, but I had to put all this out there. So this is for me personally, just talking personally. I am glad this has happened today and somebody is listening, and I will give people the benefit of the doubt, but I am very, very wary. This is just the election year plea to get people to vote for him again, and they're just going to do it after 12 months, which that is going to happen. My plea to the Welsh Government is, please do not listen to this sustrans, academic-led bunch of protesting groups. Just listen to some normal people for a change, and please do not turn your back on small farming in Wales, because that is the heart of Wales. Small farming is the heart of where the next generation farmers come from. They go on to get bigger farms and work on farms. That is where you get the rural community from. Now, and I plead to bigger farms as well, is not to look down on the smaller farmer, because we are there. That's where it all starts. We are the people where the kids come from to work on your farms, and then they go back to their own farms. Do not look down on the smaller farms. And to the public out there and to the people watching this, if you're still there, because it's been a long one, thank you very much for your support of the farming community. It means a lot, and I genuinely thank you all. And hopefully these videos and this channel has done something about this. I think we have. I think we have changed something, because people are scared of the stuff we've been sharing. And this little channel with 4,000 subscribers has done a lot, I think, in the last 3 months to change things. So thanks a lot. And as Wilfie Smith said, power to the people. And from today, ta-da, all the best, Gaz.